A very rudimental Tesla bot could be very valuable to many businesses and many people. How useful do you think Tesla is aiming for their first bots to be before they sell that first one?
That's such a good question. So what's the like minimum viable product, right?
Mm.
Um, that's such a good question. I think security is going to be a very easy one to do. Just walk around and have cameras on. That seems like a no-brainer, easy one. Um, I think a general helper around the house, maybe like cleaning, is seems complex to me, but it doesn't seem harder than driving. Because driving is like quite existential. Cleaning, I don't think it is. At least feels like it, but it's not. Because it's no one likes cleaning. I feel like such a pain in the ass. But maybe something like that would be useful, like folding laundry. God, if the bot only folds laundry, I will buy it. I don't care. Like I don't care. That is the worst chore in the world. It sucks. I hate folding laundry. So if it folds laundry, sign me up. I don't care. I don't even care how much it costs. I'll buy it. So like those types of things I think are going to be very useful. Like I think what people should do is like think through, okay, what are the things that I hate doing that are kind of easy, but I hate it because it's repetitive and boring. And that's where the bot, I think, will have its first set of features. And the security one to me seems like such an easy one and one that's going to be highly valuable. One that's going to be highly valuable. So that to me is a no-brainer. Yeah, that's kind of where my head is at. I have to think through it more. I think the way I think about it is that Tesla knows what they're aiming for already. Like they have those things identified. I think the fact that they displayed the bot being able to grab tools with its fingers and sort of build another bot with the bot, which was very meta, but we all know it was just a showcase, right? But the fact that it has that sort of capability is quite promising, that it has a lot of dexterity and a lot of precision, or they're going to aim for it to have a lot of dexterity and a lot of precision. So I think that's going to be super impressive. And whatever fits within that build that is repetitive and boring, I think that Tesla will come standard with. And then over time, it'll gain more and more abilities like building a house, doing yard work, fishing, I don't know, hunting. I have no freaking idea, dude. Like
Mm.
at that point, the limitations are your imagination.
Mm. Do you think Tesla will focus in on a niche to start with? Like they could focus on how to add value in a manufacturing context because they can test that so easily? Or do you think the real meta solution needs to be from a really generalized solution from the start?
Another great question. I think the first solution before they sell it is to improve the processes, the manufacturing capability, the distribution, the operations, the supply chain, whatever they need to do internally that's going to help them either ramp up or lower costs. And I think Tesla will probably prioritize ramping because they have most of the talent in place already, and it's just a matter of like how much bigger can we get, because the world needs a lot of electric vehicles and batteries. So, and that's a manufacturing setting. So whatever that is, even as simple as moving product from point A to point B, which is the world that I come from when I worked at Tesla on the supply chain side, it's a hugely valuable task. Because if we don't do that work, the entire service network collapses. Your entire your factory network collapses because you're not getting the parts to where they need to be. And that's a pick things up and put them down. It's as simple as that. Sometimes you use machinery, sometimes you don't. So using a bot there is going to be extremely useful. And theoretically, you would have movements that are quite complementary to many other tasks as well that are within that context. Uh, so I think in that respect, the bot's going to be extremely useful in industry and distributing parts, warehousing, just that type of task to me seems like it's a low hanging fruit for the bot to be able to do from that perspective. But I think for it to be truly, truly life changing, it can't just be a job deleter or a job destroyer, or some would argue a job enhancer, but the math doesn't pan out for that for me because I think capitalism will always prioritize lower costs over time, and a bot will always be cheaper than a human. So for it to be truly life changing, you and I, like regular people, will need to have access to it. And at some point, I think Tesla will do both. They will sell to the public and sell to companies that could use it. And hopefully that's a good future. We're still thinking through it. What does that mean? It will give people a lot more time, but then that time needs to be used uh, for the betterment of society and not the collapse of it. So we'll see. We'll see where we go. And I feel like this is perfect time to wear this shirt.
Yes, definitely. So, in light of what you just said there, how do you price this fairly? Because to a business, this could easily be worth $100,000 to $200,000 a year, but then it's not really going to reach the masses and be folding people's laundry, which is probably part of Elon's vision as well. Especially if he wants it to be able to do very, helpful things on Mars, for example. But that's further down the road. But what comes first, or how is this priced fairly to reach both business and the masses?
I think it has to be deflationary. So, which means that it has to be significantly lower than the cost of what you would usually pay for that thing, which opens a can of worms, right? Because unless you do that, it's like the hardest problem ever. If you price it at the price of a human, then it becomes very difficult and almost impossible for a regular person to have access to it in some form, unless you come up with some sort of lease program that is not that doesn't trend towards the few having access to it through some sort of, I don't know, underlying incentive or how humans typically work. So to me, it's like that unit of labor, I really think should be owned by the public in some form, which then means that the cost of getting that bot needs to be low. And what that means then is that physical labor, the cost it takes to do physical labor will experience something similar to the sort of cost curve of technology, where you have this, like, wages are going up. Like, wages is a representation of the cost curve for physical labor. In the United States, the average blue collar worker, which is a physical person, like a person who works with their hands, let's say, they get paid, I don't know, $35,000 to $45,000 a year, maybe more, but somewhere around there. The bot will, if say all labor is able to be done by the bot, that cost curve is highly dependent. It's basically 1-to-1 correlation to how much the bot costs, right? And so if the bot costs at that level, it just basically means that every person would need to hire somebody for how much they get paid each year. It's the equivalent of that. So unless you make it super cheap, then nobody's going to have access to it. So that's how I think it's going to play out. I think they'll introduce the bot. It'll be cheap. It'll make physical labor very cheap. It will introduce a host of challenges on the business side, because then every business that's dependent on physical labor will prioritize the bot over a human. And then the hope is that humans will then are able to create industry and an economy that is no longer driven by a lot of that physical labor, but it's driven by something that the Tesla bot or something like it can't do, that humans find useful and valuable. And that is where it's very hard to understand what that is. So it's kind of like an abstract answer to your question, but I just think it's so complex that's how I'm thinking about it. And I hope it made sense.
Yes, no, it does. And
Yeah.
to apply that into a business model and a structure, how do we get there? Is it a one-time cost and a subscription? You mentioned leasing. Are we going to have fleet operators like Hertz who are leasing them out? How do you think that ecosystem is going to evolve?
I think it's going to be a combination of all those. I think if the cost of entry is low enough, then theoretically anybody has access to it. And like a fleet operator could serve in a way so that you perhaps don't want to spend that 15, 20, 25 grand to buy yourself a bot. You just pay $5 a month or $10 a month or $20 a month, or whatever that cost is, $100 a month, and you have access to this bot. But now think about that complexity, right? So if those become really popular, then you create a disincentive for a person to own a bot, because they're like, I can just pay $100 a month and everything that I ever need physically done is done. Like, why would I own a bot? And that is where it gets weird to me. Like, okay, so now companies own physical labor. That's strange.
Mm.
That's strange. It's like I don't mean this in a bad way. Like, I hope this doesn't sound wrong, and it probably will, but it's like the new wave of slavery in some way, right? But it's like we're using bots instead of humans.
Mm.
And it's back in the day was the Dutch East Indian Company, right? Where they leveraged their transportation with their boat supply chain, call it, and they were moving human labor in the form of slaves from one place to another. But they kind of like they monopolized that in a way because they were really responsible for moving those labor units. And I hate to call them like that in this context, but that's kind of how to think about it within this context. But now we're using bots instead of human labor. But it was kind of centralized. It was centralized around that. Now you still hired people in places where slavery was outlawed, thank God. But no one's going to outlaw bots because what's inhuman about building a robot? Now the complexity becomes, well, it's going to displace human physical labor theoretically, but will it really? Will it really, or will it enhance the economy and allow more and more things to exist? It's just an absolute insane paradigm shift that makes absolutely no sense. And any which way you think about it, we have to ensure that human greed doesn't control its outcome. Because if human greed controls its outcome, we are so screwed. And I really feel very strongly about that. And I have no idea how it's going to end up. And I'm still formulating, right? I'm still thinking through it. So if somebody's watching this, let me know in the comments. Let me know how you're thinking about it. Because I think as society, if we really think through this deeply to ensure that we're covering all the gaps that this could present, we will set ourselves up for the maximum amount of success. And I don't know what that looks like. And I think all of us need to figure out what that looks like. So
I think it was
please
really
no dystopia.
yeah. I think it was really interesting what you were saying there about low cost subscriptions. Imagine if for $50 a month, a bot would let themselves into your house and clean your toilet, or the toilet's in your house, and then just leave. And it would do that once a week for $50 a month. How many people would do that? Millions of people would sign up to that.
Yeah. Everybody. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? And then while it's at your house, it's a security system. It's got cameras everywhere. And then maybe for an additional $5 a month, it will I don't know, it will bring you a thing like a bottle of wine that the bot distributor place has, and they'll add that as an add-on service. For an additional $5 a month, bring your favorite wine every time it comes in. Why wouldn't you do that? It's already there. Just have it bring the stuff. Just it becomes it's crazy. It's crazy. You can see how the opportunities are insane with this thing, and theoretically it should be incredible. But who has access to it is by far going to be the biggest question of all. And I'm very happy that Tesla and Elon Musk are the pioneers behind it, because they have a track record of prioritizing humans advancement in a positive way as a whole net versus trying to keep everything to themselves, in my opinion, from what I've seen. So we'll see. Hopefully it's a good future.